Alright guys, welcome back. This is part 2 of still life drawing. However, we're not drawing anymore, we're coloring. Yay! One of my favorite things. So you're gonna need color pencils today. Notice how nicely I keep my color pencils because these are mine and you guys never get to get your little grubby hands on them. Yay! I am using these Prismacolor 24. If you only have a set of 12, that's okay. 24 is probably what I recommend because there's some nice like softer tones in here, browns and beiges, and a white color pencil even. So if you're working with 12, you'll be all right. If you have an even bigger pack, go for it. Why not, right? I also highly recommend these too. These sour gummy worms from Trader Joe's. So if you hear me get quiet for a while, it might be because I'm snacking on these. Okay, so color. We have our nice beautiful composition. We hopefully also have our picture or our still life still set up with lighting on it. Remember that your light should be very directional so that you can see like what's going on with the colors, what it looks like. I'm gonna go ahead and pull up my reference right now. Alright, so one of the first steps that you want to do when you are looking at your reference or photo or whatever is to pull out a couple of colors that you can already see that dominate a lot of your piece. So for me, these are tan, a soft brown, this very, very dark greenish color, and a light blue, and maybe even a little bit of white. So I want to make sure that I stick with mostly these. I don't want to get too crazy with other random colors. Random colors can be nice as accents to tell people where you want for them to look, but we don't want to just have like red and orange and blue and just like craziness, right? If you're looking at your pieces and it is just random craziness, then squint your eyes really hard and see if you can come up with 4 colors that dominate a lot of the piece. Alright, so here's something else interesting for you guys. Notice how nice and sharpened my color pencils are. I recommend that you try to sharpen them, right? And it's okay if you just have like a regular little handheld sharpener, but sharpen them so that they're decently nice and pointy. That way if you hold them on their side, you can shade like this. So there's no lines, because otherwise you're going to shade like this and Machina's going to be super annoyed and hate your drawing. Cool? So notice all the little wiggly. I always call this pasta drawing, right? Because it looks like pasta. We don't want to do this. We want to do this. And we want to be able to build up the color. So first we're looking at just basic local color, and we're going to put it in softly over all the objects, the generic color that they are. We're not worried too much about highlights. We're not pressing hard. We're gonna get a very, very soft, almost like a wash of color. If we were doing watercolor, we'd probably do it this same way. I'm realizing also that for this part, my desk might shake a little, so I'm sorry if it's annoying to watch me do this. I'm going to try to be as smooth as I can. So notice I'm not even being super careful about edges. I'm just putting in very gently colors where I want for it to go. Think about this as like when we started off our drawing, how we just drew blobs. Now we're just kind of coloring soft blobs of color where we see that color. So I think that's good for that one. Now I'm going to do a little bit of this. Once again, very, very soft. Holding the pencil on its side. I am not worried about where my shadows are yet. I'm not worried about where my highlights are too much. Although I might want to think about it a little bit to make sure that I don't put too much color where it's going to need to go almost pure white. And then also know that for your piece, you might be looking at it and be like, oh, there's a lot of white. It's all white, Machina. That rabbit head is right. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's going to have a lot of colors on it. And it's going to change as you start to shade so that it actually looks dimensional in 3D. Notice also it can be nice to even kind of blend colors together. Ooh, the other thing I didn't really mention is you probably want paper on the side where you can test the color that you've chosen, so you can say, oh wait, maybe that's not quite what I wanted, or yeah, that feels good, and I think that'll work just fine. Now, sometimes at this stage, you guys get really stressed out because you're like, oh my god, Mishina, I'm destroying my drawing. I just have blobs of color all over the place. Know that there are stages in drawing that can be really scary, but you just got to push through them and trust that as you start to do more detail and as you try to show form with shadow and highlight, things will slowly become more and more 3D looking and will be really, really satisfying. What we're really trying to do with this first stage is get rid of the white of the paper as much as we can so we're not fighting with it, because otherwise you'll just end up fighting with the white the whole time, just being focused on trying to get rid of it all. Okay. At this point now, I'm going to say, I want more colors, so maybe now I can start to break out other colors from my little coloring kit. So I could see a cool soft purple on my rabbit head. Notice also I'm trying to change the way that I hold my color pencil so I can shade as softly as possible. Sometimes holding it further back like this allows you to be like softer with it, whereas if you're holding it like this, it's like precision, so you'll probably end up, especially if you're heavy-handed, going too hard. So I recommend holding the pencil further back from the tip, and that way you can keep your shading nice and light and soft. And yes, we are technically shading with color. And I'm going to go ahead and put some of this purple on here. And I know my dragon head is going to get pretty dark. So I'm going to pick up this. Yeah, I guess we'll go with a little bit of this black really softly. And my picture frame is definitely dark. But once again, I'm not pressing hard. I'm still trying to keep it sort of light. That way I can always sneak in other colors. So like I can tell right now looking at my reference that the shadow, the side of this picture frame is a darker black than the front of it. So if I had already colored in the front of my picture frame super, super dark, then I wouldn't be able to put this in a darker tone. Right? And I'm still not pressing 100% over there. I still want to leave a little bit of space for me to always go darker or add color in as well. So down in here, I know these spots are going to get pretty dark later, like almost black. But for now, I'm just shading them in kind of lightly. But with my black color pencil. I think for this shield back here, I might want to add a little bit of dark blue into the black so it's not just black. Okay, so now that I have color in, I'm gonna slowly start to build, and I probably want to pick just one object to start with first. And I think for the sake of simplicity, we're gonna do them in the same order that I drew the object, starting with the object that's in front and working our way back. Ooh, wait, before we do that, I want to get a little extra color into here. I basically decided that I want for this bug to be my focal point, which means I want for people to look at it first when they walk up to this drawing. All right, so let's start with our cup. And I know that I'm gonna want these colors, and I'll probably end up pulling out some other colors later as well. Now, I know that this cup here is really cool and mottled with this nice texture on it that makes it really shiny and fun, but I still want to think about where the light is coming. So the light's coming from over here. I lit it from the side this way, which is why the rabbit is light here and then shadow here, light here, shadow here. So light here and shadow here. I recommend for you guys just starting with the shadow and pressing hard on the edge and softer as you go away from the edge of your object. So on my shadow side, I'm pressing hard and then softer as I go away. And then also notice that I am doing it in sections, but then I go back over and I try to smooth them out so that they all look kind of nice and continuous. And then I can even say, ooh, it's a little bit darker on this side. I want to make sure to leave mostly this spot right here light, but otherwise I can do quite a bit of shading. And then I can see that there's this interesting shadow here. Just like when I was drawing, I want to be looking at my objects a lot and really be asking myself, what am I looking at? What's happening here? Is that just a cool design or shine? And how do I draw that? Is that shadow? And how smooth of a transition is it? Or how rough of a transition is it? What direction do I want to draw my lines? I can answer that for you right now. And the answer is, you always want for your lines to go in the direction that helps describe the form that you are drawing. So when I do lines this way, I'm actually not doing much to describe the form, but when I'm making lines going this way, I am showing the person looking at my drawing that this mug is round, and I'm really describing it to them. Like, if I was trying to talk to describe this painting to a blind person, I would tell them the strokes follow the form and really wrap around to show the depth of it. And then I want for my mug to get even darker in some places. Notice that because I started shading with brown, now I can go on top with black and make it even more 3D. Does this take a long time? Yes. Yes, it does. Not gonna lie to you. Does it end up looking gorgeous though the more you take your time? Yes, it absolutely does. It really, really makes a difference. The other thing also you're going to notice is while you are drawing your object, it's probably going to be casting a shadow that is literally called cast shadow. On the object it's called form shadow, right? Cast shadow is actually the darkest shadow, so it is essentially black. And it's usually going to fall on the fabric or ground of whatever it is that your object's sitting on. Now, if you're watching me do this and you're like, holy guacamole, Machina, how am I supposed to be able to do that? You just want to press really softly. If you struggle to make gradients, draw a box over here on your side and start by pressing as hard as you can, and then press softer and softer and softer and softer until you're not doing anything, right? And now what I want for you to notice is that most people new to shading end up doing everything here. So I don't want for you to forget about this here. This part, these really, really soft parts are really important, which is why I like to have you put in everything softly first and then do this part second. So what we're really doing now is more of this part where we're slowly making things darker. If you're really stressed out about something, press softly, and that way you can just build it up. If you're confident about something, then it's okay to press hard and go ahead and just nail it in on the first go. So like I knew that this was going to be black back here, so I wasn't afraid to go ahead and press hard and just pop that in right off the bat. Cool. So hard to soft, blendy blend. No holes, I'm not doing pasta, right? No pasta. Pasta is for dinner, not for art. Ooh, I think I'm gonna make pasta. No, that's right, I was gonna make macaroni and cheese tonight. Yeah, it's gonna be tasty. I'm curious what you guys have been eating at home. I wonder if your parents have been making really, really great meals for you. Or if they've even taught you how to make some of your own meals. If any of you guys are chefs out there, let me know. I want to know what your best meal is that you can make. Oh, I got a little distracted from my mug and I ended up shading all around it. But that was all cast shadow, right? At this point now, I want to start to add some more fun, pretty colors into my mug. So I'm grabbing some orange. Once again, I'm still showing the form. I'm going to grab a little bit of this purple. Now, if I were doing this piece for myself, coloring this mug alone would take me a very, very long time, a couple of hours. But because I'm just doing this for you guys and I want for you to learn the basics, don't get too caught. I mean, of course, you're welcome to if you want to spend 2 hours coloring a mug. I would adore it. You would definitely get an A. But know that really you just want to think about things while you're coloring. So don't watch a TV show or don't be trying to text your friend. Like really sit down and look at your objects and ask yourself, what's the form? What's the shadow? What's the highlight? How do I describe this shape? When I first got into art, I thought that it was easy because you just look at something and you just think and draw it. And then I realized that no, you have to think about every single line you draw and why you're drawing it that way. So it can be pretty involved. I don't have gray, so I'm going to do black very lightly. And I'm going to sneak a little bit of purple in there. So sometimes you have to get creative, especially if you have limited colors. But notice because I'm mixing a lot of my colors, not a single one of these areas is just one boring flat color. there's a lot of shading and craziness involved, that it all of a sudden looks way more advanced. Okay? We're not in elementary school anymore. We want to do a drawing that, like, when you show your mom, she goes, "Oh my God, holy cow, how did you do that?" And then you just shrug it off and be like, "I don't know, it's easy, it's cool." Just lie, right? Because of course we know it's not easy. We know it's really hard. Alright. There's my mug. I might end up going back to it later to spice it up even more, but I think that looks great. And I hope that your first object, especially if you have a mug or glass, is looking really cool too. If it's not, you know, I have found that if you have one of those pink erasers, like the ones that I have in the art room, they do a pretty good job of erasing even colored pencil. So if you're really frustrated and you really made a mess of it, which you shouldn't have, because you should have started with very light colors and slowly built them up. But if you did make a mess of it and you put a giant line of black through, then you'll probably be okay if you take an eraser to it to make it all soft again. Notice your goal is to make it soft again, not to completely erase it and start over, because you might end up just making the same mistake a second time, and then you'll get really irritated because now we're getting into the more involved steps. All right. So I like the way that my mug looks. I realized that when I was just coloring this fabric here, I wasn't showing the form, so again, I still kind of want to wrap around and show what this fabric is doing. Is it coming back down this way? And then I can put some blue on top of it, or green on top of it, or whatever colors it is that I'm seeing in my still life, I can bring into this. All right, let's move on to our next object. Now, dark objects can be a little tricky to do, so I recommend that you actually start with the shadows and then make everything a little lighter, so that way it doesn't end up being just a big black blob. So I'm starting with this spot here, and then I press softer around those super dark lines so that I make it a gradient. Everything should always be a gradient. There should never be like obvious lines unless it's a design on an object. So shadows, shadows, shadows. I still want to show all the cool patterns and stuff going on my incense burner. And I want for it to be a dark object, but like I said, we're trying to avoid making the whole thing black. For something like this, it's actually kind of nice that my black color pencil isn't very sharp. That way I don't end up making lines. I'm more likely to make these softer shapes. Now this is the actual ridge where my incense burner opens up, so it would make sense that it would be very dark and almost a line. And then again, we have cast shadow. Sometimes cast shadow might not be very big, and that's okay. Depends on what the object is doing and the way that it fits up against the ground that it's on. Now, I just remembered I wanted to have incense coming out of here. And you see how when I press softly, I don't end up taking out all the work that I've done. I just end up shading it down a little bit darker. That's what you really want to go for. So now I'm starting to feel pretty confident about what I'm doing. If you're not, still slow down and take your time and build it up. I wouldn't nudge you guys too much. Alright, getting close now. Notice it takes a long time to shade an object down when it's dark. You don't want it to go too fast, so you just gotta hang with it. I want for that tip to look like it's hot. Ooh, so just a little bit of yellow and red. Cool. Ooh, and I'm gonna sharpen my black now because it's driving me crazy. Ah, look at that. Oh, I love my pencil sharpener. So nice. Ooh, that makes me so happy. Oh, it's so satisfying to have a really, really sharp color pencil. Okay. Now, my incense burner has even more detail on it than this, but I don't think it's necessary to do even more detail. So I'm just going to take the color I've been using for my blanket on the ground, and I'm going to shade that in. I really wanted to get some of this green over here too, because I want to be able to better see the edge of my rabbit head. Once again, show the form and direction of your fabric. What is it doing? Where's it going? put a little bit more blue on it. And then I want to start to sneak some dark blue even into it. This is the dark blue I was talking about maybe using on that shield when we get back there. So you can have some fun with your colors, right? You don't have to make them super boring. In fact, you'll notice that your piece will look better the more you mix colors. All right. Now let's do this rabbit head. We're going to use black, but we're also going to use a little bit of blue and purple. And I don't want to obliterate out the beautiful soft colored shading I had already established in it. So I'm going to use this just to show extra form. And I definitely want to blend it in. I do not want to press too hard when I am trying to keep an object mostly white. That being said, don't just not color in a white object because you're scared. There's a lot of other colors on here. Now, something interesting is happening on my rabbit head, and that is that I have cast shadow, which is why this shape is pretty clear cut. The actual shape of the rabbit head is casting a shadow on itself. If you recognize that, you're welcome to actually draw the shape of the highlight that's being left behind on the other part of your object. It can be pretty cool. And once again, I am shading slowly. I do not want to go overboard on this rabbit head. I get so quiet when I get focused. Sorry if you are afraid of the silence. This should be relaxing though at some point. You should be able to ease into it. Let me scroll up here. Now I am thinking of this rabbit head shape as multiple different shapes. So these ears are almost like cylinders with holes in them, whereas the head is more like a sphere, but a sphere with a ridge on it, which is why this side is so much darker. Now you can see that with all the time I've spent shading, the real actual black, when I press hard, is much darker. No, I dropped some colored pencils on the floor. I think I might end up sneaking a little bit more purple and blue into my rabbit head again. But now that I'm at this point, the scary part is over. And a little bit more purple. All right. So there is my rabbit head. Take another little hot break before we move on to our final pieces. All right, guys, I did a little bit off camera so I wouldn't have to make you sit there through me just scribbling away. So obviously I just filled out a little bit more of the fabric and this shield back here. Nothing fancy going on. Just once again, remember that some parts will be in shadow, so nothing will ever be one solid color. It'll have layerings of other colors on top of it. That should be pretty obvious at this point, that it's very much a layered process and nothing should ever be direct. So let's go ahead and get some of this little bug in here. And then we'll probably go over and do some last little cleanup details. At this point, if you're noticing that there's any areas where you really neglected to build up your color, if there's any spots of white showing, you definitely want to make sure you get those dealt with. Your whole piece should have color everywhere, especially after our first step where we softly put in color to get rid of a lot of that white. It shouldn't still be apparent at this point. Now with glass, For the most part, I don't worry about it. I like to use a light blue color to make sure that people understand that it's glass, and leave some areas of pure white to show highlights. But for the most part, we're not going to do anything really fancy. If you notice a lot of highlights on your glass, the other thing I recommend for you to notice is that there's probably also a lot of shadows and a lot of other interesting colors bouncing around in your glass. So especially if you've picked a actual drinking glass to draw, there's going to be a lot of colors involved in there, and some areas you're going to leave pure white. So let me grab a yellowish tone for him in here. There's also a little bit of green on my dude. And so here's an interesting thing, right? I noticed there's some green on my insect that I want to include, but instead of just grabbing any green like this one, instead I'm going to grab the same green I've been using for my fabric. That way it all kind of matches a little. It'll really help keep your piece looking a little bit more cohesive. And you'll probably enjoy the result a little bit more. So once again, light blue is going to be your friend. You're going to softly put in just a little bit of light blue. Don't be afraid to leave some spots almost pure white. I noticed that my insect has a shadow in the box that he's in because he's a 3D boy. So let's put a little bit of shadow underneath him. Now this shadow is on white, so once again it's very light. It should be similar in tone to my rabbit head. And my actual box frame is going to be a little bit darker. So I'm going to shade this in. This a little bit darker. This. Now, as you finish up this project, I recommend showing it to somebody in your family, asking them what they think. Maybe don't show it to your little punk of a sibling that will just be like, maybe instead your mom or an older sibling that can give you like some good criticism, like maybe they say, ooh, maybe you need a little bit more color over here, or I really like the way you did this part, but not so much that part. Once you feel really good about this piece, I hope you've devoted a lot of time to it. I hope you've picked objects that you really enjoy and that are special to you. You are going to sign it or put your initials. I like to put SH20, so that way I know my initials and the date, the year, 2020. You can sign all fancy if you want to, it's up to you. It doesn't have to be anything super special, but it does help to have at least your initials on it so I know whose is whose in the future. And then make sure to take a good picture of it and send it to me. A couple things about taking pictures. Some of you guys have your setup so that you hold the camera over your piece and you just cast a shadow on the piece so I can see your hand in the phone as a shadow on your piece. But for something like this where you've spent a lot of time, I actually recommend that you find a window and you prop up the piece in some way so that the light from the window is hitting it flat from the front, and then you stand slightly off to the side or in such a way that your hand is not casting any kind of shadow. That way you get a nice, flat, evenly lit, natural light photo. and you'll probably be a lot happier with that. If you happen to have a scanner, maybe now's a good time to ask your parents if they have a scanner somewhere in the house. That's even better. That way you can be sure that it is lit perfectly flat and looks really, really great. And of course, if you're struggling in general with getting any sort of photo to me, it's okay if you just pop it into a GChat or send me a mediocre picture and we'll talk about going back to get a better picture of it later. Because with pieces like this that we're going to get into, they're more involved, and I want to make sure that both you and I have documentation of all your hard work that looks good and really gives yourself credit for all the hard work that you've put into it. I hope you really enjoyed this project. This is one of our big ones. So this really is the building blocks for a lot of the stuff we're going to be doing moving forward here. It's also a building block that you're going to see in future art classes. So if you rock this, it's just going to get easier and you can do even fancier stuff in the future. Alright, so I'm going to call that quits. I'm pretty happy with that. I think that's really fun. I hope that you also enjoy the results of this and that you look forward to doing new projects with me. I'm not going to spoil what they are. Hopefully you don't start poking through my YouTube videos. But we'll check in soon. And happy drawing, guys. Bye.